It is a filament and flare fest today. We've also got coronal mass ejections to cover. Are they earthly directed? You might like to know that and lots more things. We will compress a lot of information into our daily space weather video. So let's do it. Again, filaments galore. Hit us up on Twitter if you want to name some filaments, like the Renee Gable filament, the Kanye West filament. One of these filaments has been named also. We'll get to that. Coronal mass ejections and solar flares galore and spectacular imagery. Of course, we've also got the Bill Nye filament down here. It has now become a prominence as it hangs off of the edge. We've also got the Zach Tovin filament up here. We've got the Liver King filament over here. And I think we've got some more that need names. Did somebody name this one? I can't remember. I've lost track of the filaments, folks. There are certainly plenty. Likelihood of coronal mass ejections, nearly 100%. We've also got the Ben Davidson filament, or we used to have it, because it has, whoops, there it goes. Bye. Will it be as inaccurate as Mr. Davidson's forecasts about the sun? We'll get to that later. First, our SDO intensity gram, and guess what? The sunspot number has exceeded 200, and we can expect it to rise even further. We see new sunspots growing at the front of this group. We see new sunspots up here. Another new sunspot right here spontaneously grew, and another one rose on the southeastern limb. So, for all of those out there forecasting a grand solar minimum, have you decided to stop yet? I mean, where is it going to end? Where is it going to end? When are you going to become sane and look at the facts? You've got to have, sunspot-free days, a solar cycle with virtually no sunspots. We don't have it. Let's move on. So looking at which volcanoes are erupting here, we've got Shivaluch. Not sure if it's erupting. Don't assume that it's not. And Pole Vault Caldera. It could be unhealthful. Semaru producing a 13,000-foot ash plume. Merapi, 12,000-foot ash plume. Carinci exploding. 4.7-kilometer ash plume there from Carinci. Popocatépetl exploding. 22,000-foot ash plume, flight level 220. Fuego exploding in Guatemala, flight level 150. Nevado de Ruiz exploding, flight level 210. Sangay exploding, flight level 220. Cotopaxi exploding, 20,000-foot ash plume, flight level 200. Sabancaya continuous ash emissions over Peru and also central Chile from Villarrica. Once again, don't pole vault the caldera and check it out. Major uptick in earthquakes continues. We've got some earthquakes on the west coast of the U.S. And thanks for leaving a comment, Mike Bordages. Filaments, filaments, filaments indeed. Now we've got a bunch of earthquakes around Alaska and off the coast of California, Oregon, etc. We're only going to report 5+ magnitude quakes, such as this 5.0 southeast of Perryville, Alaska, just off the Alaskan Peninsula there. So let's hope these quakes are not foreshocks, as some of these are in some spots that could generate tsunamis. There is a 5.8 at Vanuatu, and we've got a 5.0 off the coast of Oregon. So yeah, let's hope that's not a foreshock to a larger quake. Remember, folks, any earthquake can be a foreshock, and we want you to be an asset, not a liability, in the event of a disaster. Let's get back to space. Plenty of action occurring there as well. So multiple M-class flares since yesterday. That's some composite imagery there, 131 plus 171 angstroms. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux is now up at 193 solar flux units. And we may see that rise even higher tomorrow. Here's the radial flux in context. We are at the highest levels of solar activity so far in solar cycle 25. Highest levels since May, and we've significantly exceeded those. And it's still rising, folks. The sunspot number has exceeded 200 there, surpassing the 10.7 centimeter radial flux. And let's take a look at the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard. Things are calm on Earth at the moment, geomagnetically speaking, although there are some oddities in the upper level of the atmosphere, certainly oddities in the electron content as well as the ionosphere, which we will get to in our bonus feature segment. No space weather storms or geomagnetic unrest are forecasted by NOAA. Planetary K-index is at 2.33, geomagnetically calm conditions, and let's take a look at Earth's magnetic moment from space. This is the last 4 hours of magnetohydrodynamic pressure. The units depicted here are nanopascals. And nothing exciting going on there. We show the data daily. It is not accessible in archival format that I'm aware of. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Here is Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Crescent Earth, projected onto a rectangular map. That is our ground magnetic perturbations. The units here are nanotesla magnetic flux density. Last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Real-time solar wind has been quite uneventful here in the past 24 hours. Current conditions are about 400 kilometers per second for the speed, for the density about 6.4 protons per cubic centimeter. Moving on to the magnetic data, there are your GOES magnetometers. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. Next, the ecliptic plane field plot. This is showing the polarity of the heliospheric current sheet. The solar plasma is polar, and Earth is still in a south pole current sheet, depicted here in red. North Pole current sheet in green. This data comes from Stereo A, 51 ground-based magnetometers, and Stereo B. Here are the sun's field and a line of sight plot. Solar B field depicted in blue, north solar polar field in green, south solar polar field in red. And let's move to coronal holes. So we've got some mixed fields in the eastern portion. Let's bring up the latest frame here. Mainly North Pole. So North Pole oriented coronal holes here are rotating in the east. Let's take a look at that from SDO. That's 211 angstroms yesterday plus today. So these coronal holes over here, these will get more defined in the coming couple of days. They are North Pole oriented. Next, time for sunspots. And there are lots of spots. Likelihood of X-class flares, very, very high, at least 50%. At times, getting over 60% there, especially for this group. So we've got multiple beta-gamma class sunspot groups, just like yesterday. That is a lot of solar activity, coming a couple of years earlier than forecasts for an ultra weak solar cycle, something that we aren't seeing. Proton flux did see a tiny spike there. I don't think it was even enough to create a polar radio blackout. At the moment, it's gone back to background levels. Again, we've had 4 M-class intensifications here and an X-class intensification in the past 24 hours. Let's take a look at that. Activity in some some optimal flare wavelengths. That's 94 angstroms plus 171. A little back and forth flaring there on the eastern limb. Here's a little closer view of that. There's one of those filament eruptions right at the end of the video. That's the Ben Davidson filament becoming lost in space. Here's 131 angstroms plus 171. Spectacular imagery there from SDO. Shout out to Zach Toven for naming filaments on Twitter. Hit us up on Twitter. We've recently reached the whopping milestone of 350 followers. Wow, yowzers. Dag. That is good stuff. Again, a new sunspot just rose down there in the southeast. You can see it's at an even higher latitude there, meaning farther from the equator than the sunspot ahead of it. An indication that we are still toward the beginning of solar cycle 25. There's a long way to solar maximum. There's a long way. There's a long way to solar maximum, folks. Next, looking at a star chart. We want to know what's going on over our heads. We encourage you to look up. The moon is up there. If you have a clear sky, that's what's going on over Lehigh Valley. That is the all-sky chart from in-the-sky.org. Let's do a solar system forecast. We've got a gibbous waning moon. Let's go forward 1 week. We'll have a crescent waning moon by the 18th. Next, looking at coronagraphs. Again, there have been some CMEs, coronal mass ejections. Are they earthly directed? I don't think so. That's 101 frames from yesterday. There are another 29 frames from today. Excuse me. And right at the end there, the Ben Davidson filament headed off into space. We'll let you know where it's headed by looking at stereo A and the Soho Lasco C3. So the answer is none of those filaments are headed toward Earth. That most recent one is on the opposite side, so nowhere near the planet. It remains all clear for coronal mass ejections, geomagnetic storms, and geomagnetic unrest conditions. Things are calm. Here is some more imagery for you. Next, we'll look at filaments, since there is a filament fest going on. Once again, we've got the Renee Gable, we've got the Zach Toven, we've got the Bill Nye, we've got the this is Renee Gable, this is Kanye West, otherwise known as Ye. This is Bill Nye. This is Zach Toven. This is Liver King. And that one, it's now gone, so we won't say that name again and blaspheme your ears. Lots of filaments. Likelihood of coronal mass ejections remains at nearly 100%. And remember, folks, you don't need to see solar flares or even sunspots to see coronal mass ejections. All you need to see is filaments erupting. So there's your filament fest. 304 plus 193 angstroms are good wavelengths to view solar filaments. One of the many species of ionized iron is 193, and ionized helium is 304 angstroms. And by the way, we've been playing Name That Filament on Twitter, so follow us over there. Yeah, we've reached all the way up to 350 followers. Oh my God, it's amazing. What a milestone. We've only been tweeting for, 4 years? 3 years, 3 or 4 years with over 18,000 tweets and daily original content. Here's the last about 2.5 hours from Go's 16 SUVI. So this filament down here does need naming. Let's go back. Bring up the latest image and say, we'll do a live tweet. Name that filament. And I mean this one. So hit us up on Twitter if you're willing to to access the highly deboosted aka shadow band platform. Here's the last 24 hours in 171 angstroms, which brings us to our bonus features segment. We'll start out with satellite charging hazards. And do we have any? Well, some minor surface charging hazards there over the Central Pacific. Really the Eastern Pacific at the moment, moving the way toward the Central Pacific. Go's electron flux here still quite low. And again, we've got huge anomalies in the electron content and the ionosphere. We'll show you that in a moment. First, the electron forecast. NOAA expecting a dip there in the electron flux. Maybe from a coronal hole stream, not sure about that, but it's already quite low. There's the 1-year chart to put it in context. We're in the lower third of the effective range there of the relativistic electrons. They are measured at the F ionosphere layer, so let's take a look at that layer in vibrational frequency and the anomalygram. So first vibrational frequency, that's megahertz. Millions of vibrations per second. Again, we've got huge anomalies. If you're unable to see them, it will be more obvious in the anomalygram, which is why we show it next. There's the anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. These low-frequency anomalies have been here for weeks. And also, of course, the South Pacific anomaly, formerly known as the South Atlantic anomaly, now thousands of miles from where it was just a few weeks ago. Also, huge low-frequency and high-frequency swings around the North Polar region. We've also got huge electron content anomalies over the Caribbean, which we'll get to. Here's the latest image. That's 11:45 Universal Time. Ionogram, there's 11:45 Universal Time anomalygram. And here's your total electron content forecast. It's the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your GPS handset. That's free electrons to about 12,500 miles of altitude. And I want you to look right here over the northern Caribbean. You'll see an oddity there. There is a low electron content anomaly happening there. Also some other anomalies over some other places like South America. So some serious oddities happening here in the total electron content. That's the coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model. It'll show you the most likely places for GPS errors, and let's let that play through again, as there is certainly a lot to take in when it comes to that imagery. If you're expecting GPS errors, try turning on Wi-Fi accuracy. If you've got Wi-Fi hotspots on your navigational route, the IP addresses of those and their known locations will help you to navigate. Next, the latest intensity gram. There you go. That is what a sun with like 200 sunspots looks like. And that's a lot of sunspots. Let's take a look at this latest group here. As we know, the others are magnetically complex indeed. There you go. There's the latest group. Oops, there we go. There's the latest group. And that is... it's only alpha class. I just see two South Pole oriented fields there. So we expect that to not be particularly flare friendly. These other groups are certainly very flare friendly. Let's just take a look briefly here. That has lost some complexity since yesterday, but it is still beta gamma class. This group down here, that is still beta gamma delta class. This group over here is beta gamma delta class. And this group, that's beta gamma class. And that group there is beta gamma delta class. So very high chance for additional large flares, including the possibility of X-class flares, radio blackouts, coronal mass ejections, etc. And before we get to our meteorology segment, let's take a moment to... we're kicking off things with... We've got an intro to the meteorology segment, and thanks for leaving a comment, Tinman1057 and Mike Bordages. So the first thing we're looking at, since this is certainly in the news, is the total cloud water, because there is a lot of water making its way into California. So we'll show you the flood forecasts here in a minute. Please stay out of floodwaters. Don't go kayaking. I can't believe I have to say that, but so lots of moisture there being propelled to California via the jet stream, which we will show next. So the jet stream is getting a little bit kinked there. Maybe that'll give somewhat of a respite for California. Again, we'll show you the forecast here in a minute. These are the jet streams of the east. Surface winds. Two very powerful lows there in the northern Pacific. There are the surface winds of the west, jet streams. Jet streams of the central world. And the jet streams. And the surface winds, rather. Let's go back to the jet streams here, as that is the best way to predict global weather patterns, knowing what's going on with the jet stream. We've also got the clouds and fog over the Americas. That is what's going on over croissant-shaped Earth. We've also got your weather.gov map. Some winter weather advisories there around the Central Rockies. We're going to be focusing on precipitation, since it is certainly the story today. There's your key. If your area is lit on the map, click your area on weather.gov and get your weather alerts. Weather.gov. And here's your 72-hour GFS forecast. Now, keep in mind, if that rain shifts a little bit to the east, folks, you could have 7 additional inches of rain in Northern California. At the moment, most of that is going to fall in the Pacific, and that is certainly a good thing. Northern California not really needing an additional 7 inches of rain. I don't think at the moment. I don't see any droughts there. I looked at the map earlier. Let's also take a look at pressure and precipitation. Some heavy snow is also expected for California there. But the main story is the massive flooding. So that's your 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. And here is your pressure map. Let me just press refresh on that. There is your pressure map, and check out those low pressures. Those are some seriously strong low pressure zones. 966 hectopascals, 962 hectopascals. And on the other side of the spectrum, we've got an anticyclone here in between the Azores and Portugal. High pressure zone there, that's an upper level high. rotating clockwise as anticyclones do in the northern hemisphere. Next, looking at our lightning mapper. Some lightning in the Atlantic there. Some minor amount of lightning in the western U.S. Let's see if we have any terrestrial strikes. We saw some rare strikes around Sacramento on yesterday's video. Today, no terrestrial strikes in the U.S. as reported by lightningmaps.org. If you enjoy the content, support the channel by picking up some merch. Give Smash staff a raise. If you click the link below the video, you'll find the merch in order of best selling. This merch may or may not reflect our political views. As I am apolitical, I am a pragmatist. I believe in things that work, and I am all about facts. Never belonged to a political party, likely never will. So if you think you understand my politics, they're probably a lot more nuanced than you think. If you'd like to put me into a box, you ain't got a box big enough. And congratulations on surviving a global scandemic so far. You've been doing a fine job. Today's featured product is Universum Liberate, the motto of the Galactic Federation Special Forces. Are you sick of what's going on in your home? What about in your neighborhood? How about in your town? What about your county, state? What about your region of your country? What about your nation? Are you sick of what's going on in your hemisphere or continent? Are you sick of what's going on your planet or your solar system? Perhaps you're sick of what's going on in the whole galaxy. If you are, well, then you probably support the Galactic Federation Special Forces, whose motto is Universum Liberate. Lots of entities out there yearning for freedom. What about you? It is a message of personal responsibility. And the symbolism is the galaxy, signal strength and security and integrity, and instantaneous galactic scale reach. Universum Liberate. Convince your friends that you're in the Illuminati by saying Universum Liberate. Again, make sure you press like and subscribe, press share, tell your friends and foes about the channel. We've got playlists that don't have anything to do with space weather, by the way. So check out our playlists. You'll find the 12 Days of Smashmas. You can find our alarmist, fear-mongering fake news weather reports. There are even videos about gaming. Don't forget the 12 Days of Smashmas, Terms Defined, The Diamond Anvil Too Hard to Smash, Smashomash.org Presents the Sun, and lots more. We also have created our own website, depicted here. It's smashomash.com, and welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. We haven't forgotten about composing a paper explaining the mechanism underlying the solar sunspot cycles. It's pretty serious. We launched our site in 2019. So help support the channel via clicks. If you are unable and or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallet. If you are able and willing to open your cobweb-encrusted wallet, support the channel via Patreon. Smash staff will be putting up some content on Patreon from time to time. We also have created our own subscription services site. The official subscription services site of the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, is smashomash.com/smashteam. Thanks especially to our gold and silver subscribers. There is also a bronze Smash Team level. We do have email alerts that we typically send out for certain types of disasters and things like that. So you can sign up for the email list. Again, smashomash.com/smashteam is the official subscription services site. The best value is the gold annual paid-up subscription. It includes complimentary merch. Let's get back to meteorology and close this thing out. Here is your U.S. Doppler radar map. Links below the video to all of the things I've mentioned and much more. So some heavier precipitation there showing up in Alaska and, of course, inundating the northern half of California. Here is your shortwave radiation showing clouds and fog. It is infrared radiation. And there is the water vapor map. Moisture moving toward the Dakotas there, as well as additional moisture from the Pacific showing up at California. Here's your recap. U.S. Doppler radar. Shortwave radiation showing clouds and fog. And there is water vapor. Thanks for tuning in to the Smash News Network Least Busted Damon News. We hope your video was chock full of facts and absent of fraud. Well, I know it was absent of fraud. It's very easy to do that because it's very simple to not intentionally misrepresent material facts. So once again, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-a-Mash, signing off, and may that solar wind be at your back.